You don't really decide to check your phone, and you don't consciously plan to brush your teeth every morning. You just do it. Today, we're going to explore the invisible architecture of our daily lives, our habits, and how the brain turns something difficult into something completely effortless, something on autopilot.
Just think about that for a second. That little urge to reach for your phone, where does that even come from? It's a perfect example of a behavior that's become totally automatic. And this isn't about a lack of willpower. It's actually a demonstration of your brain's incredibly powerful habit-forming system at work.
And it is definitely not just our phones. Research suggests that a staggering 45% of our daily actions aren't conscious decisions at all. They're habits. That means that almost half of your day is run by an automated script inside your brain. So understanding that script is really the key to understanding your own behavior.
Okay, so let's dive into this. To change our habits, we first have to get really clear on what they are. We use the word pretty loosely, but in neuroscience, it has a very, very specific meaning.
A true habit is something that just happens. It's not something you need to remind yourself to do or write down in a planner. The single defining feature is its automaticity. Your conscious mind, the part of you that's listening to me right now, is not required for the action to actually happen.
And this is where a lot of confusion comes in, so it's useful to see them side by side. A goal, like get fit, is just a desired outcome. A routine, like going to the gym, is a set of actions you repeat, but it probably still requires some effort and planning. But a habit is when the action, like brushing your teeth the moment you get out of bed, requires basically no thought at all.
So here's the crucial litmus test. If you have to push yourself, use willpower, or maybe set a reminder to do something, it's still in that routine phase. It hasn't yet crossed over to become a true, automated habit that your brain just runs for you.
So how does the brain actually build this automaticity? Well, it follows a surprisingly simple three-part formula. It's known as the habit loop, and this is the fundamental mechanism running in the background for every single one of your habits. Every habit, doesn't matter if it's good or bad, is built on these three steps. First, you have a cue, which is the trigger that tells your brain to switch into automatic mode. Second is the routine, which is the behavior itself. And third is the reward, which is the satisfying feeling that tells your brain, hey, this loop is worth remembering for the future. And these cues can be almost anything. For example, the time of day might trigger your craving for a morning coffee. A specific location, like being in bed, can trigger scrolling on your phone. Or it can even be an internal emotional state, like feeling stressed, that triggers you to reach for a snack. Now here's what's actually happening inside your skull during this process. When you're learning something new, your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain, is highly active, and it uses a lot of energy. But as that action becomes a habit, control shifts to a deeper, more primitive part of the brain called the basal ganglia. And as this shift happens, the effort required just plummets, and the behavior becomes automatic.
Now this is probably the most critical part of the whole process. At first, the pleasure chemical dopamine is released when you get the reward. But as the habit gets stronger, your brain starts to release dopamine in anticipation of the reward the second it sees the cue. This is the neurological basis of a craving. You start craving the phone before you even open it.
We've all heard this number, right? It's one of the most persistent myths in self-improvement. And it suggests there's some kind of magic finish line for building a new habit.
But the science is very clear on this. It is simply a myth. There is no magic number that applies to every person and every single habit.
The reality, according to a major study from University College London, is that forming a habit can take anywhere from 18 days all the way up to 254 days. The average is about 2 months. So the key takeaway here is that consistency over time matters so much more than hitting some specific 21-day target.
So all of this begs a pretty fundamental question. Why does the brain go through all this trouble to automate our behaviors in the first place? Well, the answer really comes down to one thing: efficiency.
Your brain is an incredibly energy-hungry organ. Even though it's only about 2% of your body weight, it consumes about 20% of your daily energy. Conscious thought is metabolically expensive. It takes a lot of fuel.
So, your brain has developed this brilliant strategy to conserve that precious energy. It automates any task you repeat often enough. Habits aren't a sign of weakness or laziness. They're actually a feature of a smartly efficient brain designed to free up your mental resources for new problems and creative thinking.
But this very efficient system has one major blind spot.
Does the brain's automation system actually make a distinction between productive habits and, well, destructive ones?
The answer is a clear and simple no. The brain's habit formation circuit is morally neutral. It doesn't judge. It only asks one question. Was there a reward at the end of that loop? If the answer is yes, it will strengthen that connection, whether the habit is exercising or smoking.
Okay, so understanding the science isn't just an interesting academic exercise. It actually gives us a whole new framework for thinking about personal change and self-control. So let's look at a few of the practical takeaways. This one is a real game changer. If habits are triggered by cues in our environment, then the most effective way to change a habit isn't to rely on more willpower, but to redesign your environment. If you want to stop checking your phone, make the cue, the phone itself, less visible. If you want to start a new habit, make the cue obvious and easy to see.
This is a really crucial insight. Once a habit is wired into your brain, that neural pathway never fully disappears. It just becomes dormant. And this is why an old cue can suddenly trigger a craving for a bad habit you thought you'd kicked years ago. The key is lifelong management of your exposure to those triggers.
Big, ambitious goals often fail because they require way too much upfront willpower, and they're just hard to do consistently. Your brain is much better at automating small, easy actions. So the secret to long-term change is often starting with a behavior so small it feels almost ridiculous, and then just letting repetition work its magic.
In the end, your daily life is less a product of your grand ambitions and more a reflection of your automated systems. Your goals might set the direction, but it's your habits that actually get you there. So the real question becomes, what systems are you building for yourself?